I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking through.
So why be different in business? I don't know. Actually, I do know. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some dialogue around that today with my guest, my friend, my buddy from another part of the world, Eastern Canada. But before we jump in and get him on here, here's a note from our sponsor. Hey, welcome back. So do you have a question about business, mindset, sales, marketing? I'm a certified Brian Tracy focal point business coach and part of a group of a couple of hundred around the globe. If you have a question, would like a complimentary coaching session, when I bring my guest on, you'll see my contact information and just shoot me an email. And if I don't have an answer to the question, I can introduce you to one of my peers. So our guest today is also a coach, although it's not currently what he's doing, but he's done that. He's had 29 years in the process control business, 5 years in business coaching, 5 years as a mortgage coach. He's also a father, a husband, and an extraordinarily interesting human being. My friend, Gary Brown. I'm bringing him up now.
Thanks, Phil.
And your favorite quote is, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. I like that.
Right. Apparently an African proverb.
Is it really?
So I discovered when I tripped across that thing. But speaking about tripping, I almost hurt myself grooving to your intro music.
Hey,
and I must say, no, I just want to make the comment that it's a nice point of differentiation.
What's that?
The music, the intro. I like the spinning pen. I liked your segue into going live. And it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, I'm glad that you were able to fit us in today into your schedule. One of the things I'm going to do, which I forgot to do, is if you're watching this live, great. Pop in with a question, comment. We love to get your feedback. And if you're watching on the replay later on, go #replay and let us know where you're watching from. And if you have a question for a business coach, fire it my way. My email address is at the bottom underneath me. And if you know somebody would be a great guest to be on the show, send that to me as well, because you never know whose message you could help get some ears on and eyeballs on that can make a difference in somebody's life. So we're going to talk today about making a difference in your business. So why be different in business? That's the premise of today's topic.
Great question.
Yeah,
great question.
I know you have all the answers.
Well, let's say that I've got lots of opinions.
Yes. Well, that's good.
Yes. And it seems to me that if you're not focused on being different, the chances are that the people that you compete against or with, if you want to say it that way, are gaining on you rapidly, and you might be completely oblivious to the fact that they're passing you. And it just strikes me that and this is very anecdotal, I must admit, but as you walk up and down or drive up and down Main Street in whatever town you want to talk about, and we're situated in Canada, so let's talk about a Canadian city somewhere. I don't know about you, Phil, but I see these sales signs frequently on storefront windows. 10% off, 20% off. And I can't help but think to myself, so is this the way people differentiate themselves in their businesses, by reducing the price? And my next thought is, that's got to be an extremely slippery slope. And then I begin to wonder, what do they really think about, when they press their fingertips together and get reflective on how they can be different in their business, how they can stand out. Might remind you a little bit about that book entitled The Purple Cow. How do I stand out in my business? Well, I'd stand out if I was a purple cow because you've never seen one before.
Right.
So
I think what you're talking about is absolutely spot on. It's sad that the high percentages of small businesses, for sure, and maybe even some of the larger ones, but the backbone to our economy is a small business owner.
Yeah.
And if they're competing on price, and if that's the only thing that differentiates them, they're going to be stressed out, always competing, always somebody going to make a better offer than what they have. Everybody's offer can be beat at some point, some way. And then what ends up happening is this is a race to see who finishes out of business first, isn't it?
Well, and a lot of these companies won't have control over their supply. So they don't have control over input costs, or very little control. And then here's the guy down the street. Yeah, I'll go down another 5 points and I'm lower in price. And then just to sort of add to that, we're all caught up in the need to be in the social media space in some way, shape, or form. So I go on somebody's website and lo and behold, they reveal their pricing right on their website. And I can't help but again think, oh, okay, so if you believe in the adage that we buy from people we know, like, and trust, you're making it so simple for me. Simply go to your website. I'm in the market for product X. I've discovered 3, 4, 5 suppliers of that product. I go to all 5 websites, let's say. You each post your price. And now I simply go, oh, I've commoditized them. Or
Yes.
frankly, they have commoditized themselves. And now I just choose the lowest price. I never enter into a conversation with anyone. No one ever reaches out to me because they didn't know I visited and scoped out their pricing. And it's happening all around us. And I just go, what are people thinking?
Oh, did you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, if you like.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what they're thinking, except for my experience is often is they'll look at their competitor, no matter what segment of the market they're in, whether in HVAC or a chiropractor or manufacturer. They'll go and see what somebody else is doing that's in the same business as them, look at what they've said, almost replicate their website, change the colors and the name, and the stories are almost the same. And everybody seems to lead with it's about me. So I've been in business for 30 years. Why should I care as a consumer? Because I don't. Other than, well, that's you survive some stuff. That might be a good thing. But one question I ask all of my clients that I work with is when they present something that gives them a UPS or a unique selling not UPS, that's a brown truck guy, USP or a market dominating position, is to look at it and ask that question. So what? So what does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
So that they can get to the point, because that's the question that's going through their ideal customer's mind or client's mind is, so what? And to your point, you see 5 different websites have basically the same value proposition or unique selling proposition. And the only thing that differentiates is the price. So as you said, they've commoditized themselves.
Yep.
And they're wondering why they can't make their mortgage, or why they're paying their staff so much money, and why they can't take holidays. They might as well just shut the door and go get a job. And I know people who've actually done that. And I tried to help them, but they weren't ready to be helped. So we can't help people who aren't open and receptive to change and opportunity to do things differently. So one of the things I love about what I do is I get to meet some of those people that are open to and sick of competing on price. And what we end up doing, as I shared with you when we got started in the green room, one of my introductory elevator or infomercials is around somebody might say, what do I do? And I'll say, well, I'm in the business of stopping the insanity for small to medium-sized businesses. And if they reach up and say, well, what do you mean? Then I'll say, well, are you a small business owner? And if they say yes, I say, well, just imagine this. You've spent the money on advertising and marketing. You've done a really good diagnostic process to identify that you actually do have a valid offer and solution for the person you're talking to. And then you get to the point when you present your solution, which means there's going to be some investment talk in there. And you get to the end of it and they ask for 20 points off or 10 points off. And I'll ask them, has this ever happened to you? They go, oh man, all the time. And I said, well, isn't that crazy? He said, absolutely. And he says, well, that's the insanity that I work with people like you to stop having. So we end up getting you to a place where you get to live the dream that you originally have, get the passion back in your heart, the bounce back in your step, not work so hard, make the money you're wanting to make, and hanging out with the people you love to serve. So
that's interesting. So in a very similar sense, I'm quite involved in some mentoring activities in the Kitchener-Waterloo area right now. And one of the things that I frequently will say to people is, in terms of, if you will, my shtick, is that I like to encourage people to be open to possibilities.
Right.
And I just find that people frequently are so closed in terms of what the possibilities are. You know, they know what they know, but aren't necessarily interested in expanding into those things that perhaps they're not so familiar with. And, you know, as I was listening to you, and shame on me for thinking about something else, because I should have been riveted on the listening side of things, right? But I couldn't help but reflect a little bit on, and this is an expression that goes back a handful of years, I guess, but we used to talk about benchmarking.
Right.
I'm sure you'll remember that. And it just occurred to me that maybe that's kind of similar to SEO, search engine optimization. You know, so we're all seeking, it's like you go buy the latest business book, because I think if I turn to page 112, all will be revealed. And I just think to myself, we're all, you know, trying to find that answer. We're all seeking SEO. We're all trying to benchmark, but it's taken us all to the same place.
Right.
When in fact, we should be looking at opportunities to be different. Out of curiosity, are you familiar with Blue Ocean Strategy?
Yep.
I just think that that's a really refreshing way to think about being different. You know, when they build their strategy canvas and compare your business to a handful of competitors, and what are the factors that you compete on? And then you start to look really critically at, gee, am I just copying what everybody else does, or am I somehow different? Right. You know, you talked about the unique selling proposition and the so what. You know, that I hear Simon Sinek's voice resonating in my mind when the words so what get used. But that's right. Yeah, I do this, this, and this. Who cares? You know, what's in it for me? And I like to talk about what's the benefit of the benefit. So I'm going to buy coaching. Okay, there's a benefit to having coaching. But what is that underlying benefit? Is it, as your infomercial was saying, is it the doubling of income, which then leads to more time off? And okay, what do I do with all that time off? Well, it's time with your kids, your family, your pet. I mean, to follow some other passion that you might have. You know, it's a huge opportunity. But is that what's driving you, or is it nose to the grindstone and it's simply doing the same thing over and over? You know, it's the wheel and the little chipmunk running around in a circle.
Yeah, so the MDP stands for a couple of things for me. Major definite purpose, that's one thing. So getting to the second point, what's the benefit of the benefit? What's the driving force? Major dominant purpose. Why are you in business in the first place? Yep. And it's different for everybody. And understanding what that is a critical piece of success.
Oh, I'm in it to make money.
Well, that could, yes. And in addition to the money, what's the money going to buy you? And how much money will be enough? And if they
but don't you find that a lot of people start with I'm in it for the money?
Yeah.
And haven't articulated beyond that?
That's exactly where I'm going.
Okay.
So that's one driving force, but it's not the major dominant force that Napoleon Hill talks about, or I talk about. And then the other thing is, you talk about Blue Ocean. I'm familiar with that, and I'm familiar with some things that go beyond that. And we talk and teach our clients what's their market dominating position. And what is it that makes you stand out above the crowd that differentiates you? So if we can when we get you to that space, my little rant there about how I introduce what I do is kind of around that. Because if we can get the passion back in your heart, the bounce back in your feet, and you can get paid what you're worth, I mean, you're no longer a commodity. You're selling on value, and people are dragging their friends to you with their credit cards in their hand. Not theirs, but their friend's credit card. You got to come and see Gary. He's the best mortgage guy ever. Come and sign the papers here. Don't go anywhere else. That's the kind of thing you want to do. And when you build your community, like Seth Godin says, then that will happen. But there's ways to do that, and discounting is not the key. Because if you discount something, and I forget exactly what the percentage is, but there is a matrix there, that if you discount something 10 to 15% to get somebody in to buy your product, how many more people do you need to get to buy your product to break even or to get back to ground zero? And it's a significant amount. So we have some other strategies and tactics to help our clients actually stop the insanity of competing on price. So being different in business is crucial. Otherwise, you're just like every other company, just like you. And if you don't,
I'm curious, when you get involved in a conversation with somebody and you ask them what is their point of differentiation, what's sort of the typical first answer that you get? Is it customer service?
Yeah, that's one.
That's one. Yeah.
Oh,
and do you then ask
longevity?
Yeah. What is customer service? When you ask, what does customer service mean? What kind of answers do you get?
Oh, it's very ambiguous and it's very platitudinal.
Yeah.
And very what's the
qualitative then?
And clichéic.
Oh, okay.
That's a new word. I made that up. Clichéic. It's clichéic.
That sounds like a Scottish word.
I
mate. Yeah. So, and they ask the next person and the next person, and they probably come up with very similar kinds of customer service answers.
Yeah.
So if you had a room.
And then I ask them that other question. So what business are you in? And they tell me, I'm in the printing business. I'm in the shoe business. I'm in the chiropractic business. They tell me the technical side of the business.
They're not in the reducing or removing insanity business.
No, they're not until we get working together. So one of my favorite success stories is I had a client in the printing business and worked with them for about 4.5 years. And they went they're doing really, really well. And one of the things we talked about was I asked them that question. I said, what business are you in? And they said, we're in the printing business. I said, yeah, that's kind of what you do, but what business are you really in? So we did a deeper dive and they finally figured it out. We're in the communication business. We just happen to do it with printing.
Mm-hmm.
So they help their customers get their messages out in a succinct sort of way, leveraging the technology of the printing industry.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me of and this goes back a long time in business school, but the notion about with the railway companies, what business were they in? Well, we're in the railway business instead of saying we're in the transportation business.
Because when you get clear on that, guess what ends up happening? Well, I shouldn't ask you to guess because you know. So what ends up happening?
Well, getting clarity certainly one would think provides you with the opportunity to be different.
And if you're different, your message is better, right? And if your message is better, you're targeting your ideal target audience. You don't want to work with everybody, do you?
I would think not. There are some people that definitely don't light the fire for all of us. And frankly, there are enough people out there that need help. You don't need to help all of them. And let's help those that, one, certainly need help. Yeah. But, the business has got to be reciprocal. It's got to work for your client. It's got to work for you. So I would certainly agree that you're not going to work with everybody. And
nobody ever wants to work with me.
Yeah, no kidding. I'd pop my eyes up too, but I believe you.
How should I take that? I don't fit in everybody's wheelhouse.
Well, and I get that. I would certainly say the same thing about myself. I tend to be, shall we say, analytical. I like to think through a process. And this is why, putting my fingertips together is my way of saying we need to think about what we're doing. And it's fine to react, but there needs to be some thinking in my mind. Now, having said that, one of the other things I find that, at least in my opinion, that people perhaps fail to do in their messaging with regards to their differentiation, they don't put any emotion in it. They don't speak to the emotional part of their client. And you and I both know that emotions drive our decision making.
Yeah, and you're a scientist, are you not?
I've got a degree in engineering.
Yeah, so that's kind
Yeah.
of like science, right? Engineering
Well,
science.
it's kind of like science, I guess. Yeah, it's 1 + 1 = 2.
Right, and it's very logical, right? So when I
Some
was
people would say anal, but I like logical.
analogical, but it's logical, analytical, analytical. It reminds me of a story when I worked for another company and we were in the sales training business, and one of the participants was an engineer. And we were talking about this very thing you're talking about, that we're emotional by nature. We're
Yeah.
100% emotional, and we back up our decisions with logic. But this one engineering guy couldn't get it. So I think we were into week 4 or 5 of the program. It was a 14-week program. Anyway, he comes in and he was really resistant to the idea that we're emotional. He says, everything's decided by logic. And we didn't argue with him. We expressed our case as best we could. Everybody else kind of bought into it. But the 5th week he came back, he says, I got it. I said, what did you get? He says, you're right. We're not everything is logical. There's emotion. Do you know this? And he mentioned some kind of algebraic formula, which I didn't know. But he was so excited and passionate. But he went, well, on this formula, you do this, you do this, you do this on this side, you do this on this side. When you get to the end, there's no logical answer. You have to emotionally decide. I get it. So even he got it eventually.
I read something recently that I thought was quite helpful in terms of cementing this notion of emotion, and that is that before we get to think about something, we've used our 5 senses. I mean, to see, to hear, to taste, to touch, to smell, some input that then drives us to our thinking process.
Right.
And I thought, gee, that's a clever way of really pinning down the fact that there's some emotion then that causes you to start thinking in some direction.
And one of my mentors along the way taught me something that ties into that. I'm going to share it if you'll allow me to.
Sure.
Okay.
I'd be happy.
All right. I appreciate it. It's called, well, actually, we first get a thought or an idea, and then we get a picture or an image, and then we get a feeling or an emotion. And the reason I'm going up here is normally I draw this out, and I connect those 3 points with a line. It's a curved line with an arrowhead, and each one of those connects to the next one. And the more we think about it, the clearer the image gets, the more clarity we have in the image, the more powerful the emotions become. And the more powerful the emotions become, the thoughts around it and solutions and ideas get bigger, better, and brighter, and we get a bigger picture and becomes more 3-dimensional. Maybe it becomes a movie, emotionally moving and tracking, and moves to the emotion. So that keeps going. It works, by the way, negatively and positively. And a lot of people in the state of worry are doing this, worrying about what they don't want to have happen, and they put a lot of energy into it to actually make what they're thinking about become more of a reality. So this was introduced to me as something as known or called as a self-talk cycle. So the power of setting goals and differentiating yourself in business is to come up with that same kind of passion and emotional connection to what it is you're offering and whatever services or products you're making available. And running your business with that in mind is a great way to move forward, to invent the future. Because I forget who it was, maybe it's Walt Disney. He said, you know what, if you want to know what your future is, do you know that quote that I fumbling on?
Yeah, it was something about if you want to know your future, then you build it.
Right. And building it is using that 3-dimensional 3D way of thinking, right? Invent your future by thinking about it. And I'm gonna one more thing, and I'm gonna let you talk for half an hour because I ate up all the time. And I'm just kidding about the half an hour, but I'll let you have equal time. And that is, I want everybody that's watching this now live or on the replay to become BS sharers. Yep, you heard it, BS sharers. Because that is the key to this 3-dimensional thinking that I'm talking about. And a BS person is somebody that believes it and then they see it. They do not see it until they believe. It just doesn't work the other way. Disneyland, Musk with his car and his space travel, Sir Richard Branson, his travel, they've all had a belief before they see it. It's not the other way around. So be in the BS space.
Cool. You've been making me think a little bit about, even with your production here, the in front of the screen and behind the screen. You've been calling it the green room. Excuse me. I used to be a client at a coaching program called the Strategic Coach, run out of Toronto. And Dan Sullivan has a number of interesting constructs. One of them was the theater of the mind. And I remember using this in my focal point activity with a florist. And this woman was complaining about building a quote for some couple that had come in. They're having a wedding. They need flowers for their wedding. She, the bride-to-be, would describe the flowers she wanted. My client would build a quote, and then the bride-to-be would take it down the street and get competitive bids against it. And my client would lose because somebody undercut her by a nickel. So I suggested to her, gee, you're putting a lot of effort into quoting. Why do you do that? Well, I do it in order to satisfy the customer. I said, the customer is looking for a price with a spec sheet, i.e. all the flowers. You have enough experience that based on the number of guests, you could probably estimate what the cost per guest is in flowers. She comes in, tells you I've got 100 guests. You simply say, well, the price will be $2,500. Oh. She now has nothing, she, the bride-to-be, to take down the street to get a competitive bid. So then I further built on that and said, when your client comes in, prospect, I should say, get her to do this theater thing in her mind. You know, you're at the wedding. What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What is that emotion that you feel? And how do the flowers and the arrangement and the colors play into all of that? And how are you feeling about it? Oh, by the way, that'll be $3,000 for your flowers. I mean, if you can demonstrate your value, and I guess this takes us back to the very beginning, if you can demonstrate your value and how it satisfies even a need that the client wouldn't necessarily recognize, but now you're really hooking that person on what it is that you are delivering, whether it's through product or service, price becomes secondary. In fact, you get to the point where somebody says, I want to pay more by going to company ABC because there's recognition from others that I've got good taste. You know, I know where to go to get good product, good service, and others will follow me. It's back to how you differentiate yourself.
It totally is. So have you heard of Rolex?
No.
Watches?
Let me see what time it is.
Yeah. So
it's not a Rolex.
No, but a Rolex watch is prestige. People, I mean, you could get a watch like yours, nowhere near $25,000.
No, it's not.
People buy Mercedes, don't they?
Yes. They go to Starbucks, don't they?
Oh, I was getting there, but you're absolutely right.
Sorry.
I did that. Oh, okay. I did that the other day. I bought a tall latte and it cost me just under $5.
Yeah.
People are doing that all the time. So price is not the reason why people decide what they're going to do. It goes back to what you said. They're emotional. It's the association of hanging out at a Starbucks because you're cool. It's the experience of it. You're paying for it. I mean, it's like going to your favorite restaurant. If they treat you right, you'll pay the higher prices. You could get a bottle of wine at half price or a third of the price and pour it at home.
Sure.
You don't have the ambiance. You don't have them serving you. You don't have them kibitzing with you and all of the other things that a good restaurateur brings to the table. You go for the experience, not for the price.
I mean, it's just like this conversation. Think of the knock-on benefit that I'm going to get because I hung out with you for a while.
Well, let's hope so. And to help people get to where they can find you is I'm putting your one of the things you're up to these days, and hopefully that's the right one because I didn't get your permission, but I put it up there anyway. So you can get a hold of Gary Brown. It's Gary.Brown at Mortgage Ingenuity. I got stuck there. Like, yeah, it's genuine. No, it's ingenuity. Okay, so there it is.
How ingenious of you.
I know. Thank you. Anyway, in last parting comment, what would you share with our viewers now and the ones that are watching later?
I'd go back to this notion of being open to possibilities. Don't be closed. You know, we learn what we learn from about the age of 0 to 8 years, and that becomes our worldview. And if we stay stuck in that, things don't change. What can we do to crank open the possibilities? Because possibilities exist all around us today. We can't see them because of our biases, our prejudices, our filters. Be open to, and maybe I need to insert the word new in there, but be open to new possibilities.
Yes, I totally get that. Well, I'll share more about that after we are done on the show here. But I thank you for being here, getting up so late in your day because you're 2 hours ahead of me, and sharing some fellowship with myself and the audience.
That's great to see you again.
I love your wisdom. So again, thanks very much. I'll see you soon.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, Phil.
You're welcome. Wasn't that fun? I thought it was fun. And one of the other things that I want you to think about is you are wonderful. That's why I have that spelt that way. You're also very unique. So go out and share your uniqueness with the world. And we'll see you on another episode of The Business Renovator.
I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking through.